introduction, then ask you guys to make a quick introduction. Actually, the 45 minutes was a good timing. Again, we have a conversation where there's lots that can be said, so we're trying to keep it concise, and then if we have on good time, we can revisit some of the topics maybe a little bit as well. But,
Are you from Volvo?
I'm from Volvo.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, I have a Volvo Penta MD7A in my last earlier boat.
Excellent. And nowadays?
I have actually
No boat?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
there's a sale waiting for you.
But it was delivered with that remote, so.
Yeah. You have you have a brochure with you, right? So
You want, and has to this one on your boat. Like this.
Do I get also now one, or do I still keep
I think we have those two. You have a choice. You can keep the microphone, or you. I guess.
You can take that one. I can
Like
take the
this?
microphone. I was using that.
It's okay with your ears?
Yeah. As long as I don't look too odd.
Yeah.
My ears sticking out.
Is it unpleasant?
No, it's okay.
Then you have someone in your pocket.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sådan der. Sådan der.
Tror jeg bliver meget godt.
Så har jeg et eller andet lomme.
Og den er tændt, eller?
Okay.
I will have the microphone. Yeah. It's mine. Yeah, it's all mine. Yeah.
Hej, Jens Ole.
You want?
Fra Sverige? From Sweden?
Yes.
Ja.
I think run over again. Just give us.
Jeg er på forsig i Sverige, men jeg er dansk.
Okay.
Ja.
Yeah, if you could maybe sit at the front, yeah, that would be good.
Ja, vi driver
Kim was using
linjen
it,
mellem
so if you could just be
Ja.
yeah.
Ej, jeg bor i Helsingør. Ja. Jeg pendler
you're
til
good.
Sverige. Nej.
Hello and welcome everybody to this session on maritime transport, energy efficiency in maritime transport. We have an important topic to cover. My name is David Hunt. I'm the CEO and founder of Hyperion Cleantech Group and the host of the Leaders in Cleantech podcast. I have some esteemed guests with me this morning, so I'll ask them each to make a very brief introduction of themselves. Jacob?
Yes, thank you. My name is Jakob Lundholm. I'm working with ABB, and I'm fronting the large-scale upgrade and extensions within marine and ports.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kimmo Rauma. I'm working for Danfoss, running there the division called Danfoss Editron. And we have three segments there. We have on-highway, off-highway, and marine. And all of these are only for the electrification of these areas. And I'm having that part of the business.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jens Ole Hansen, Chief Operating Officer at 4C. 4C is a ferry company operating a high-intensive route between Helsingborg and Helsingør, Denmark, Sweden.
Yeah, and my name is Johan Inde. I'm responsible for the global marine business for Volvo Penta. Volvo Penta is part of the Volvo Group, which also has trucks, construction equipment, and then Penta with marine equipment.
Thank you very much, everybody. So we saw recently from the IPCC report that we're really running out of time to make big decisions, to make big changes to the way we live our lives. And of course, marine and maritime transport is a big challenge, but also a big opportunity. Of course, it's highly polluting, but on the flip side of which, it's absolutely essential to the way we run our businesses and the way we run our economies. And not something that we can change without good foresight and forethought. So we're going to cover a few topics today around what is happening, what could happen, and more importantly, what we'd like to see from politicians and policymakers that can support and enable this transition further. So maybe some brief thoughts initially on exactly perhaps some of the things you'd like to see to enable this transition to the electrification of marine transport in particular.
Well, first of all, we need a predictable and accountable framework. Marine business is a demand-driven industry, and therefore it is quite important that we have incentives, but also predictable frameworks for investment. Investment levels are often high, and lifespan of installations are also long. And therefore, it's very important that we have these incentives, but also predictable frameworks to work and invest within.
Thank you. Yes, again, brief thoughts.
Yeah, and I fully combine whatever you said there, that everything needs to be, but at the same time, we all know that we don't have time. And when we are talking about investments, that lifespan is 25 years. If we don't do the setup and change now, then we don't see the change coming up in this industry for 25 years. So there is no question about it. There needs to be clear setup that the change will happen now. Yeah. There shouldn't be any new ship built for short sea shipping with fossil fuels-based designs.
Thank you. Jens?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, clarity. I just heard that the Parliament in EU voted down yesterday the EUTS trading system. So once again, we are left in a limbo. We don't know what to expect. We can only guess. And like the other gentleman said, we need some kind of time frame where we can rely on some sort of stability in order to do these investments.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, and I agree on the infrastructure of decision making, but to take a bit of contrarian role then, I think we need the daredevils and the entrepreneurs to show the way. If you look at some of the vessels that we've built together, it's daring operators, it's good technology teams that dares to show what is out there. Yeah. So of course, policies, infrastructure, all of that, but then it's down to having a bit of courage and take some risk. And what is interesting is that those entrepreneurs and starters are typically earning a lot of money as well. Look at Elon Musk. He stayed for policy, he wouldn't be where he is. So just to challenge that perspective, we can't wait too much for decision making and frameworks, but of course it needs to come over time.
Yeah, it helps, absolutely. So sometimes it's useful to state the obvious. Let's have a brief look at, as an overview, why electrification of marine transport is a good thing. And then subsequently we'll look at sort of examples afterwards. But your thoughts on broadly, why should we electrify marine transport?
I think first and foremost, there are two opportunities which I think play in concert. One is, of course, to reduce carbon emission. And it's viable today, it works. You have to be very careful to the use case where you apply it. So it needs a bit of dedication to the application and what is the job to be done for a certain vessel. But then I think as well, it paves for user experience, and it paves for some additional features that we haven't seen before. It might be maneuverability, the thrust that you can get on a boat to do tight maneuvering, etc. So when you play the bigger economy of carbon together with increased user experience or a better work cycle, then you get a good mix of transformation, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. Jens?
Talking about pioneering, we converted 2 vessels started in 2016, applied for EU funding, received 50% grant, very much appreciated. And we have now been in operation with 2 vessels, fully battery driven, the largest in the world in operation, full scale. And we have cut down the emission with more than 50% on the total emission from operating 4 vessels. So we need 2 more vessels, and we will do it and be completely carbon neutral in 2030.
And how does that benefit your business as well as to the environment, which is obvious?
Well, but I would say the most important thing is being here. You can't operate a company when it's closed in 5 years. So actually, running from city center to city center, if we should be there for the next 20 years, it was the way to go.
Thank you. Kimmo?
Yeah, I will simplify it a little bit when you ask why. We need to have clean air, we need to have clean sea, and we need to get rid of the noise pollution. All of these will go away when we electrify ships. And every one of us know how many ships you can see in the harbors and in the inlands. It's everywhere that you can see them, and everyone knows how they sound, how they look when they are built typically 20 years ago. So now when we build new ones, we just need to change it because there's no reason why not to do it.
Thank you. Jacob.
Yes. From a technology supplier point of view, obvious, the efficiency of electrification should be a main driver. It is so that it is much more efficient by running electrified than with the conventional fuels. Saying that, it will also, or the operator and ship owner will benefit from an electrical system by being able to, or being flexible in integrating future fuels. Whether this should be hydrogen-driven fuel cells, batteries, or even any other power source. So you will get the infrastructure in the vessel which can facilitate basically all power sources.
More options.
Yeah, as a main source or just as a complementary power source. But then there are also some derived benefits. It could be better or improved maneuverability of vessels, less noise, better working environment for the crew, better experience and comfort level of the passengers.
Yeah.
And basically you may consider the investment in electrical vessels, or at least hybrid systems, as a future license to operate. And considering the lifetime, expected lifetime of a conventional vessel in the range of 25, 30 years, it is quite obvious to most that within this lifespan, there will be an even higher demand, at least in the later part of that lifespan, for going electrified. And if you do the investment up front, you have the possibility anytime in the future to adapt to that.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think one of the challenges is often misconstrued. For me, the technology isn't ever an issue, at the moment at least. I was involved in clean tech since 2007. And yet at that time, you would look forward and think boats, ships, aircraft, this is impossible, this will never happen. And yet the reality now is different. But again, we have the situation with education where those of us who are working in the sector see these things, and many of you who are creating policies and doing important things don't necessarily see that because you've got a million and one other things to be doing. So let's look at what actually exists. What are your companies, organizations doing right now? You touched on this briefly, Jens, but what is the situation? What are we able to produce? What is the situation now on the ground in terms of being able to electrify marine transport? Should we start?
So if I start from my perspective, and I mentioned the use case before, so you need to know how the vessel will operate in order to design a solution. Today's solutions for electrification are not as versatile as just having a diesel engine, size your tank, and then you go on whatever operation. So that's the first rule. We've built two specific vessels I can mention quickly. One is a tourist vessel, a passenger vessel, tourist vessel up in Svalbard. It's in operation right now. It's a hybrid, so conventional driveline combined with full electric. It takes tourists roughly 1 hour at cruising speed using the diesels, and then 3 hours of full electric cruising to do whale watching, etc. Reducing the footprint overall in a good way. Second is, together with Danfoss, we built a vessel which is out on that side, right, out on the water, a wind farm service vessel. Again, a hybrid drivetrain. You can run it full electric from the battery bank. You can run it full electric, and you can run it charged by a bank of gensets. Again, operating profile, go out to the wind farm, you use your diesels, you cruise in the wind farm by deploying service personnel, you lay at your point for hours just using the electric, and then you use the drivetrain again to get back. So understanding your user profile is the key to using today's technology and be able to reduce your carbon footprint. So those are two examples of what we're doing.
Is it a case of demand and technology? So for example, if there's a use case, a business comes with you a use case, the technology exists to create and design electrification into pretty much most vessels?
I would say so, and if I take the two examples, what is really interesting is when you start spinning the business model and the operator are prepared to pay maybe a better day rate for the wind farm vessels. They are up and running more often, so less service. They are also helping the owner and operator of the wind farm to show sustainability strategy in action, so to say. So whenever you get that cycle to spin, a good application, fit to technology, and also the economic cycle, it definitely works. That's what we see in many different places. Then there are transport routes today that are not possible to convert to full electric, etc. So you need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
That I think is the key ingredient.
But it says there's already applications where it does work and can work, and we can build on this.
Absolutely.
But
And we see with my...
I was going to say, yeah, that leads nicely onto the
Perfect example, right?
You've touched briefly on the 2 vessels that you have.
Yeah,
but again,
but I fully agree because when we started our project with retrofitting 2 vessels, diesel electric from the beginning, and actually at the time we started 16 and 17 years old. We had a solution for, you can say, the battery management system on board the vessel, designed the battery pack for the for the feature of our route. We sail for 20 minutes and are in harbor for 10 minutes, and that just goes on 365 days throughout a year, 24/7. The key thing was we could not do this without the capability of keeping the 60 minutes turnaround for 365 days. That's where ABB came into business here, because it didn't exist at the time. So it had to be developed along with the conversion of the vessels. And I think we have paved the way with a lot of difficulties throughout the first 3.5 years. But now we are there. And now we can really see the benefit. When you see a vessel operating day on and running like 97 or 98% of all trips in battery mode,
Yeah.
with charging from ashore, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And no noise. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Then higher rates. Being in the business to consumer market, I can just tell you, they don't pay additional for that.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on a business case where you think, okay, we just increase the prices by 20% and then everything will be fine. That's not how it works.
We'll touch on subsidy support or support broadly. I think going back to Jens Boyd, that pioneers are always great to have, but it's also important for people to recognize that the pioneers very quickly are followed by others. There's lots of money waiting, there's lots of people waiting for those to break cover first. As is the case obviously with Tesla, and suddenly now everybody's electrifying vehicles because they thought it was possible. And seeing that things are possible is always the first start, I think. Another good point.
Can I just put in one very important item is the fact that the customer satisfaction, our Net Promoter Score, has increased. The diesel ferries is 50, but the battery-driven is above 60.
These are important things for consumers who drive a lot of costs and choices for many of us. Technology, Kimmo, again, let's talk about solutions, but also an interesting point in terms of retrofit, because going back to your point, a lot of these vessels are old, there's a lot of existing infrastructure, a lot of existing vessels out there. We can't just throw them all in the bin. I guess we can, but that's not necessarily the best solution. So both in terms of new technologies and retrofit technologies, what are you seeing, what are you doing at Danfoss?
Thank you, David. And from that point, I really want to take and say that the pioneering in this area, we have been really in Danfoss doing the pioneering. We have built the first vessels, electric vessels and hybrid vessels, in almost every country in the world where they are. So it is in China, it is in Taiwan, wherever. It's the first vessels are built by us, with the operators together, regardless if it's a retrofit, what we have done a lot, but also the new builds. And in here, we can really see 2 applications who are here. Just taken, there is a partnership with Penta. We have built the crew transfer vessel here, and then we have also the full electric Ellen ferry, which was one of the Horizon 25 program, and it was inside the top 5, and it has been the most successful program in the whole program altogether, because it demonstrated a full electric. There's everything is full electric, even the emergency part, and the payback time for that investment, even with the new technology on that time, is 8 years. So it's just that the commercial viability is already there, and that's important. But what I really want to emphasize is, again, that when we talk about electrification and capabilities, yes, we have done it, it's available, but at the same time, we found out that in marine industry especially, the customers are really sensitive about maintenance. And also, it's really traditional business. They also want to see the long-term players there. And so in this industry, the partnerships becomes more important than ever. And that's why I really think that with the Volvo, we have created the most impactful partnership in this industry by serving our customers, regardless, do they want to have a hybrid, do they want to work in the traditional one, do they want to go for full electric. We can service them all with the existing partners in global wise. So there is no other who can service and give these benefits to customers today. So you can go without worries and build a new vessel, and we will support them throughout.
Yeah, certainty is important. We'll touch on that again a little bit from support, but firstly, Jakob, from your point of view, what are you seeing and doing at ABB to enable this transition to take place?
Yes, we are also pioneering, but in addition to also medium and large size vessels. We are helping our customers to electrify and by that increase productivity and sustainability. And we are helping front runners as 4C to achieve their strategy by pioneering technology, pushing technology to the very limitations, and even developing new application-specific designs and technologies to adopt existing technologies to this specific application. An example is the requirement for very powerful and fast charging of 4C ferries. We have a charge window of 10 minutes. And this, at that time, and still, it has never been seen before to charge such a big vessel in such a short time with such high power. So we adopted existing technologies within our robot technologies to make this very fast connection. We connect actually within 30 seconds. We do the charging in 7 minutes, full charge, and then we ramp down and disconnect. Everything is done fully seamless and automatic. We also help customers for new projects to apply new power technologies like fuel cells and so on. Integrate that. We develop power management systems for that. And we even provide, let's say, full propulsion lines, which is capable of adopting future fuels.
I think it's important, thank you, that organizations of the size and scale of Volvo and Danfoss and ABB are fully behind these transitions and creating the opportunities and creating the technologies. Like to look a little bit at the support. So if we look at some of it's important to see that both things are happening and that there are successes and that there's a great deal of speedy evolution, but it's also good to recognize challenges. So we're going to ask you all to look at challenges, whether they be technological, whether they be business models, whether they be consumer opinions, whether they be policy, leading the conversation slightly. Where do you see the biggest challenges in sort of the rapid move forward in marine transport electrification?
That would be the transparency and predictability of the framework of investment. There should be clear investment or clear incentives set out by the politicians. They should be predictable and accountable, but also we need to educate ourselves and have courage to invest. We have again a prime example with 4C, which have actually turned a pioneering into a strong business case, which is also having tremendous positive society impact. With the level of carbon reduction achieved simply by applying available technologies, which is even more mature today, is a kind of, it's actually a low-hanging fruit if you have the courage, because it is proven that you can make a good business case out of it. But of course, you also need to rethink your business in the sense that you need to find the courage to motivate yourself to make the investment. But also the consumer needs to be educated that we cannot, or the consumer cannot always make, let's say, the cheapest decision for them. We need to have true accountability of the one consuming. So the incentive should be on fuels, or let's say the full economic and society impact
Cost,
of
yeah,
the society cost of the fuel should be incorporated basically in the price of the energy.
Yeah.
And then for sure the ship owners will be prepared to make the investment.
Have an incentive, certainly. Kimmo, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there is two things, that the support from the government and of course then the legislation. And as said earlier, just we don't have time. So let's be clear: punish those who pollute. That's just absolutely clear. Punish those who pollute, and then give money to those who are the front runners in the industry to make the change. Those are the two clear things. And then I want to point out that governments, please walk the talk. If we look at the biggest owners of the operators are basically governments in Nordics, for example. They are owning the biggest part of the fleet. If the governments are not okay to make the decision now with 8-year payback time and then running lower cost today, then why you are talking about it? You are the biggest owner of the fleets, so don't do any more IC-driven or other things to this world. You own it, so you make the decisions and walk the talk.
Show the example, yeah. And
I fully agree. No. Actually, it is a very good business case. If you have an owner that believes that you can invest an awful lot of money and then in 3 years' time cash out, you have the wrong owner. So, and luckily for 4C, we have the right owner with a longer perspective, understanding that this type of investment was actually good. And how did we calculate? Because it was extremely difficult. What is the price for electricity from shore side, and what is the price from diesel?
yeah,
Okay, how do we think that this will develop for the next 25 years? Nobody knows. The prices has gone up and down. At some point, I thought this would be the worst investment ever, and then 2 years later, it looks very good. But with the, I know that we, in a few years' time, will need to pay for the emission. So the business case today is a no-brainer. Just go and do it. Of course, you can't change if you have a concession for a ferry route for only, let's say, 10 years. It's a little too short. And the government needs to acknowledge that if they want all these small ferry routes to be fully electric,
yeah.
they need to look at the concession setup.
Duration, yeah, absolutely.
Very good. I think many things well said, and Kimmo, I like the carrot and stick. But I think, I mean, just look at Norway for the marine side. They have not only put subsidies on the table, but they've also made the application process very, very fast. And I would guess they have the best or the biggest working fleet right now of electric vessels. But if I would add something, I think the session we have here represents that. Let's call it public-private partnership in a sense, right? Because I don't expect legislators to be at the forefront of technology and legislate before it's possible, but please follow the industry closely and be very, very fast in adapting when we show from the industrial perspective what is possible. I think that's the key part. Not having 10, 15 years of time to be able to secure land for new, or waters for new wind farms, or whatever it might be. So a bit of tighter collaboration, I think, in policy making, and let us in the industry show the way, but follow closely. I think that's the most important part, to get moving. Right?
Yeah.
I think you have a very good example of what you've done.
Yes.
And Jens, you make a good point also. I think, I've always said in business, the last thing anybody wants is surprises. We like certainty. You can deal with certainty. Even if it's good or bad, you can deal with certainty. You can't deal with surprises. So how can governments, policy makers, create a more certain environment for the investments and the decisions that we're asking people to make to go through this journey of electrification? I'll go in reverse answer.
If I latch on to what I just said, you need to lower the barriers, right? I mean, when you say that now we stand in front of a binary decision, either we invest everything in this direction or in that direction, or we do nothing, you create an inertia in decision making. We would see that as entrepreneurs, company owners, and I would guess for politicians as well. And then the solution is probably what we call the minimum viable products, show what's possible, lead the way by starting a bit smaller than making the binary decision, and then you can get follow-on decision making, which is much faster. So allow for pilots, get stuff out there, show what's possible, learn from the big first examples.
Yeah. What specifically would you like to see from a policy or a support perspective that you think will be sort of game-changing or really enable more examples of the pioneers to
If I just pick one thing, which I just mentioned, is the fast route to get financial support from governments, as I believe Norway has been leading. And I think we will see that across the world. I hope, I would say, because I think that fuels the journey, just to mention one thing.
Thank you. Kimmo, your thoughts?
Well, I already said that what is clear, you need to punish the ones who pollute, that's super clear. But then another thing, it's not only about the pollutions in marine case. IMO is one of the biggest organizations pushing back, because it comes to the part that the marine industry is the biggest skeleton of logistics in many cases, which gives our goods, and if we increase the pricing there, it comes immediately to the end price of the goods that are there. And this is what prohibits there, because it's immediately, if you have Nike sneakers, it will come on top of there. And that needs to be accepted by everybody, that the price will go up in the short term when we do this. And it needs to be accepted, but I would really appeal to the IMO of stop pushing back on this one, but really becoming a change maker in the marine industry.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. We're pushing the price back to the polluters ultimately, but it's more complex than that sometimes. Jacob?
Yes. I think first of all, I would like to reframe that we should not punish those who are compliant. And the ship owners, they are compliant to the international regulations, obvious. But there could be more efficient and more climate friendly ways to do things, and there should be incentives for that. This is our approach, and we should have a good discussion with ship owners, but also legislation to achieve such framework. We see that the easiest vessels to electrify is the one operating short sea. Domestic-wise, this is inland ferries. We have a fixed infrastructure. They are going into same ports. We know the schedule. We can easily set up charging facilities, and most of these routes can be electrified fully, even today and immediate. Many of those vessels are though trading on concessions signed with the government. In the end, it is the government they are contracting with, and therefore it's important that also the government is agile in renegotiating those concessions to make it feasible for the ship owner to make this transition, which the ship owner often is promoting to the government or the politicians or the concession owner, which is possible and can even be made without extra cost, but you just need to recalculate. And maybe you need to shift some of the costs which is spent on conventional fuels and paid by the concession owner to the operator or whatever the constellation should be. We see that there is a possibility that renegotiation of such charters can be made without additional cost to any of the parties, but we will have the society as whole will benefit from the decarbonization of the fleet, and it will make a much bigger difference than electrifying a few thousand vehicles.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Jens, as a business owner, what certainty or what would you like to see that will make the decision easier to electrify those next two vehicles?
Well, actually, we have made the decision. We will do it. The next one will be in 25. It's a little more complicated because it's not diesel electric from the beginning. So we also need new thrusters, etc. So it's a bigger investment. But on the other hand, the vessel will be able to operate for another 20 years. So the time frame is okay. Of course, we would like potential partners in this project to be as cheap as possible. That's always the case. But in terms of certainty, actually what really worries me is that sometimes legislation do not go hand in hand with reality. For instance, electrical cars will be all over in due time. Can we transport electrical cars on a ferry? Question mark. Already today, EMSA is working on a set of rules that should be applied to ship owners transporting electrical vehicles. But in my mindset, if we agree that everything should be electric in 2030, we need to accept that a lot of the transportation among islands and nations, we have to have the electrical vehicles on the car deck. So we can't create barriers one place and then talk about decarbonization another place. That's what is really worrying.
Yeah, it's about inertia as well. You're placing something which, of course, the batteries can explode. It's rare, but it happens. But equally, we will touch on this. Combustion engines explode all the time, and we put those on ships. So as you said, that sort of coordination or connection between various different policies. We do have a little bit of time in case there's any questions from the floor before we wrap up. Are there any thoughts or any questions anybody has for the panel? Have one there.
What is the size of the vessel that we see that we can electrify right now? What is the limit? Will it makes economic sense? And what's the price range you think the end users would accept, whether it's fleet operators, companies, or individuals?
Thank you. And we'll take a thought on the size of vessels.
From my perspective, it's more, it's not necessarily the size, it's the operating profile. And I think we all testify to that. It depends on the job to be done. You can have a huge vessel over the waterway here, of course, but then if it's a job to be done where you do a pilot operation in front of a harbor, etc., you need to size it to the length of your operation. So I don't think size is, sort of say, it's playing in the game. It's more the application as such. We are operating up to 35, 40 meter vessels as Volvo Penta, but I know our friends from ABB are, and Danfoss is working in a very different size. So maybe adding to the question.
Yes. Yeah. I fully agree. Basically, we see no limitations in the size of vessels as such. We can electrify any vessel, but we need to understand that these electrical vessels, they tap into the utility. And therefore, the utility grid will have to be able to support the charge required for those vessels. And therefore, the frequency or these vessels are, let's say, porting or docking, really depends if it's possible to charge sufficiently to fully electrify that vessel. But from a technology point of view, we can electrify any vessel.
Thank you. Kimmo?
Yeah, maybe I would say that let's look on that where it makes most sense and it's easiest to adapt. So it's for sure everything what is in short sea. So something that is not going overseas. That's like a clear standing. If it's something in the short sea, in the inland, in the shore, that we can electrify the most easiest because we can apply the charging, and also we can do the hybrid, so then you don't need the charging, but you can operate every time electrically where there is habit and there is the sea areas that are sensitive to the pollution more. So we can always use the benefits where it's needed the most. So let's go for the easiest one first because there is huge amount of opportunities there. And then the overseas, we will solve that also, but it then comes to the little bit different kind of ways like the fuel cell technologies that we will implement then to the big ones to go overseas.
Different solutions. Thank you, everybody. We're running a little bit out of time, but what I'd like to give each of the opportunity to do is if you have a primary request, having the ear of people who make and dictate and influence policy, what would be your primary request that would enable the, as I say, the more speedy transition to electrification of marine transport?
Have courage to set out the legislation needed to give the incentive to the investors following this new technology. We need pioneering companies to take a lead and show that it's durable and even a good business case. So this must be clear and then keep this framework stable.
Thank you. Johan?
Trust the industries to drive the change and follow closely with the policy making to nudge in the right direction.
Jacob? Sorry.
Jens-Ole? Yeah, but I agree with the others. I think it's okay to let the ones that pollute pay, but the amount they pay should be offered for those who do make changes.
Yeah.
And then make it easy to apply.
Yeah.
Not too complicated.
So recycling the money, I think again that's the obvious thing is you punish and you reward, you use the same money, so there's a net zero cost essentially to governments or to organizations. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, maybe I would like to take one note there that first of all, look the countries that have put these in place, like China. They have already put it in place, for example, in the buses, and already there now, most of the buses are electric because both of these, they had the incentives and then they had, in the end, if you don't apply when the incentives are there, then there is a punishment coming afterwards, and then everybody knows that, okay, so create that kind of model. Look at the same time the passenger cars. When that decision was changed, the industry followed immediately. The market works like that. When you put it in place and you don't hesitate, we as a companies, we change because our business cases changes immediately and we work according to business cases, we are making money. This is the job of the company. So when you create the business case for us, there is no question about it. We change our models immediately. Yeah. We don't do it before.
Yeah. I think this is another thing about the recycling of things because successful companies pay more taxes. So there's a win-win from governments. You know, you create more business, you create more taxation. Thanks everybody on the panel. Just in closing, I think the important things to see there are that there's no lack of technology. Of course, there's still an evolution and things will evolve, but there's no lack of technology to make things happen now. There are companies willing to make the transition now. There are enormous organizations who are equipped to take things forward. And we saw last year in the EU, there was 11 billion euros invested in clean technologies, much of which was in transportation. Of course, much on mobile transportation or land-based because the policies are somewhat clearer there. So clearer policies, I think, for marine transportation will enable that investment to shift, will enable these companies to evolve. So I think that's a message in that we can do these things. We just need a little bit more clarity, a little bit more support. But thank you very much for our guests. If you can give it a round of applause, thank you for our panelists today. Thank you. And thank you for joining, and thanks for those watching the live stream. Thank you.